Morning guys, and welcome back to AutoTechNick. Today I need to go ahead and address some loose ends that I've kind of been dragging my feet on a little bit. We need to go ahead and finalize or fix some holes that are in the floor of the boat and getting this thing one step closer to being back on the lake. Okay guys, before we really get into it, I need to give you a little bit of backstory to help explain what I'm doing, because things are a little bit out of sequence on this. Now, during this entire rebuild, I've done my best not to jump around and kind of keep everything in order or each video on the one subject that I'm doing to the boat. Well, on these holes that we're talking about here today, I had to go ahead and address the top side of them early on in the build. So the holes that we're talking about used to be right here on either side, right on the side of the engine. And there used to be some cast brass water pickups that were attached to the bottom of the boat. And then they had some 3/4 inch galvanized pipe that came up into the boat, and they were always capped off. We've never used them for anything. Previous owner installed them for some reason. And I went ahead, took up the opportunity to take those out while I was doing all this work. Now, the reason why I only addressed part of it early on and didn't finish it, there's several reasons. One, I wanted to get the holes filled, leveled, and smooth on the top of the boat because I wanted all the repair for that to be underneath the wood of the stringer and all of the fiberglass that I added for the tabbing to go over that repair. Hence, now you can't see them. If you look, you can faintly see the green circle to where I filled it in with the 1708. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't fix it on the bottom side at the same time, and that's simple. I had the boat leveled out so that way I could get the stringer set, the floor, everything set in the boat level. So I leveled the boat off of the keel, and then everything was built off that level. Now, in order to keep it easy to get in and out of the boat, I had the boat set on the jack stands as low to the ground as I could because I didn't want to crawl over the boat. Well, now we have all of our wood in, and the only time I'm going to need this boat level again is to get the pump intake set and the engine set, but I can go ahead and move the boat around now. It's not as critical, so it's going to allow me to raise the boat on the jack stands, and it's going to give me a lot more space underneath the boat to go ahead and fix these repairs. Okay, so before we go ahead and get the boat raised up and go underneath and see what we have to work with, I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap of what I did up here on the top side. Kind of just to go through so that way we can cover this repair from start to finish. For the sake of this conversation here, we're going to pretend where I started this repair. So we had the stringers out of the boat, and I just had the galvanized pipe sticking up on the floor of the boat and my brass pickups on the bottom. Now, these brass pickups were also attached to the bottom of the boat with 3 screws each, but they also had epoxy putty, the same putty you use to set a pump intake, adhering them to the bottom of the boat. They were on there pretty good. I initially took the screws out, tried to knock them free, knock them away from the hole of the boat from the top side. It didn't work. They were pretty well stuck in there. In the end, is what I ended up doing is I ended up taking my oscillating saw, cutting the epoxy from the bottom, and then go ahead and on the top I actually cut the pipe off flush with the floor of the boat, and then took a die grinder and ground out that brass pipe real quick that was within the fiberglass of the boat and held in with the epoxy, and then I was able to go ahead and knock them off of the boat. Once I had that done, I went ahead and just put some tape on the bottom of the boat to cover the hole so that way things wouldn't sag through, and then all the repairs I did at that point were focused here on the top. So at that point, I just took my die grinder with a 40 grit sanding disc and I went ahead and beveled that hole out. So I made that hole that was only about 1 inch in diameter, and I ended up bringing it out to about 6 inches in diameter. So I progressively tapered that out, and I tapered it all the way down to the bottom of the boat, so the hole actually did get a little bit bigger. Once I had that done, I went ahead and just cut out some 1708, and I cut pieces progressively getting larger, starting from the smallest diameter of the hole, progressively getting much bigger out to the top of the surface. And if I remember correctly, it took me 9 layers to build up enough thickness to sand it smooth and have it flush with the bottom of the boat. So that was what I did for the repair on the top side. And in a worst case scenario, that repair could be considered good as long as I adjust the bottom, put some gel coat over it, or sealed it up from the water. But I want to go a little bit further and make sure that I've done this the best that I can. So that's where we're going to go ahead now. I'm going to get the boat raised up, bring it underneath, and we're going to go ahead and finish up this repair on the bottom side to get the best repair that we can for this boat. Okay, so we got the boat up as high as we could on the jack stands. So now we got some working space. I'll go ahead and crawl under and show you what's left of the repair from just doing it on the top side. So you can see here, the main hole, and you can tell that I made this hole quite a bit larger. It's probably 1.5 inches, if not a little bit bigger. It originally was about 1 inch. And that's from the beveling on the top side. You can see where the mark where the old pickup was. You can actually see where there's some screw holes, and these are fairly deep. And there's really two main reasons why I'm coming back and repairing these on the bottom, because I don't really have to. I could just go ahead and sand this smooth. This surface is a little bit deeper, so I could sand that flush at the bottom of the boat and I could go ahead and gel coat over it. I know that I did a good job and I have a strong repair up there, but for me, any force that's going to be applied to this repair from the bottom is going to be trying to push this 1708 away from the parent material of the boat. If I go ahead and put 2 or 3 layers over here and have it beveled out, any force that's pushing up on it is pushing the bottom part of that repair up into the boat. So that's just going to make me sleep a little bit better at night. And the second advantage is when I go ahead and bevel that out, I can address these screw holes that are here. So this side has a much bigger hole. I'll go ahead and bring you guys over to the other side, and you can see that this one is a lot smaller and there's no screw holes. Now I'm a little bit limited on the size of repair that I can make or bevel for these, and I'll show you. And that's because I only have 4-inch wide 1708 left, which means I only have a maximum of a 4-inch wide diameter of the biggest part of the repair I can make. So I cut this out. I'm going to go ahead and use a silver Sharpie because, as you saw, the bottom of my boat has some old speed coat on it. This will make a nice circle where I can go ahead and lay this out and get this positioned. Show you guys here. So I can get this positioned, and I can find a position that's going to go ahead and cover my repair and also the screw holes. So I actually don't think this is going to be dead centered on the old repair. I think I'm probably going to end up shifting it a little bit to get that screw hole. I'm not really sure. I need to set the camera down and hold this up and really come up with the best placement for it on either side. I'm going to get these cut, and then I'm going to go ahead and get the die grinder. I'll have a mark of where I'm going to be beveling this out, get this beveled out, and I'll bring you guys back when we start glassing all this back on. Okay, so we got everything prepped, so let's go ahead and slide under and I'll show you what we ended up with. Alright, so you can see here that I offset it a little bit and I shifted it, and that way I could get most of the 2 screw holes gone. I was able to get one completely removed by my beveling, left just a hair of these other 2. I didn't want to go much deeper into the floor, so I actually filled what was left of those screw holes with a little bit of fiber filler and just kind of left it flush with the surface of the rest of this, and we're going to leave it at that and fill that in with the glass. Now over here on the other side, you can see we've got 2 spots I ground down. We'll cover this one in a second. But on the main spot with the hole, you can see where my original mark was, and I didn't really need to go that big at all because I wasn't trying to bevel out the screw holes. So I was able to keep this a lot smaller. It's a little bit shallower. I think I'll be able to do 3 or 4 layers to get this back up to the level of the surface, and I was able to keep it centered on the existing hole. Now, while I was over here, I found that there was a little bit of damage in here, and I started to dig in a little bit with the grinder. I figured I was here, might as well. Now's the time to get that taken care of. It was a little bit more of a damage that was down here than I wanted to leave. I mean, you can see I got a bunch of marks down here on these corners, and I think down the road I can fill those with gel coat. This one was a little deeper on the glass. I couldn't make it a good perfect circle because I didn't want to get into this side and really just make it more complicated on myself. I have oval pieces cut out for this, which I think are going to work just fine. So we'll just go ahead and get this taken care of while we're getting this one all glassed in. Good morning, guys. Now, yesterday we got the hull of the boat prepped, the fiberglass put on, and I actually just pretty much left the boat at that point yesterday and let it cure up overnight. So today we need to go ahead and get it sanded. Now, sanding it's going to be a little bit tricky because I won't be able to effectively sand it with the DA because I don't have space, which I'll show you here in a second. So I have the options of either using that oscillating sander or actually just sanding it by hand with a block. Now, my fiberglass is a little bit proud of the bottom of the boat, which I did on purpose, so I need to sand that back in. I don't really want to block sand that by hand, so I'm going to be lazy and try to use a power tool to get it close. Once I go to get, the finer detail in, I'll try to sand it by hand if I need to. But let me get the camera set up and I'll show you what I'm talking about with the DA, because it's tempting to try to use the DA in this area, but I think it's going to create more problems if I do try it. So let me get you guys set up down there so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, guys, so here's what I'm talking about, where it's tempting to use this DA because it has so much surface area and it's easy to work in here to sand this. But hopefully this shows up pretty well on the camera. Right here where this straight comes out, you can see that it's pushing my DA off the surface. So if I try to sand it, I'm either going to grind into this strake, or I can run the DA focusing on this edge, sand that down. Now I'll be able to do that, but because I don't have the DA flat and I have it rolled up on an edge, it's actually going to create a divot and cup this repair, which I don't want. So I could use the DA and get it close and knock it down, trying to minimize that cupping of the repair, but I just don't want to bother with it. So I've had good luck with this oscillating tool on the inside of the boat when we work in the back of the bilge. It'll let me get in here flat. I can keep it from getting cupped, and that's just really going to help me mow it down. And then if this is not working as good as I want, I'll come back and block sand it. But to be honest, I don't really want to block sand this up over my head without much space, because it's hard to get, your upper body into it. Hopefully this works out like I planned, and I'll let you guys know once I'm done. Okay, so the oscillating sander worked great. I sanded it down with some 40 grit to probably 80–90% of the surface that I wanted. And then I jumped to the board, doing a block sanding, doing a crisscross pattern with 80 grit to finish it off. Let's go ahead and slide under and I'll show you what we have. There we go. So you can see on this bigger one, it's pretty good, symmetrical, and it's blended in pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with that. It feels good, although it's not necessarily perfect, but we're going to address that here in a second. And on the other side, as you can see, again, nice smooth repair. You can see that there's really nothing overlapping on the old gel coat, and it's all confined within those spaces. Now, like I mentioned, they're just a little bit below surface. They're not exactly perfect just yet. So what I actually plan on doing is I plan on going ahead and putting some gel coat on these, letting that kick off, and then I'm going to go ahead and block them down one more time with the 80 grit. So the only gel coat I have right now is untinted white, but that's fine because I'm not using this gel coat like with the intentions of it being the finished product to protect it from the water. I'm just using it as a thin layer to go ahead and help me block this out and make it smooth and get rid of all these transitions and blend everything in. Because these areas are so small and because I don't have much space underneath the boat, I'm just going to go ahead and mix it up and brush it on, and then I'm going to go ahead and once it's kicked and cured, I'll sand it down. And then we'll come back later, probably when I have some gel coat that's tinted to the color of the boat, and I'll spray on a final repair. So for now, let's go ahead and get this other gel coat on so we can get it blocked. Alright guys, I was able to get the repairs all finished up on the bottom side, so let's go ahead and slide under and take a peek. and you can see it sanded down real nicely, very smooth. Can't really even feel that the repair is there. You can still see in these two areas here, there's a little bit of the raw glass sticking through. That's completely fine. Like I mentioned, I don't have any other gel coat at the moment other than this white. I am going to get some of this cream white. So is what I'm going to do, once I have the gel coat that matches the color of the hole, I'm going to go ahead and clean this black speed coating off in a bigger area. I'll spray on this cream gel coat over the repair in these areas, and then I'm just going to go ahead and sand it smooth, get the orange peel out, feather in the edges, and call this repair complete. But until I have that gel coat, we're going to call this good for now. You can see here on the other side a bigger section where that got through to the original glass, but now the only way you can tell there's repair naturally is because of the different colors. But if you go ahead and feel it by hand, there's no transitions, everything's smooth. You would never know that there was a repair there. All right guys, tackling a project like this, fixing a hole in the bottom of your boat may seem daunting, but it's really not too bad, especially when you have access to both sides like I did. You can spend a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, elbow grease, and you can get those repairs completely unnoticeable. It is a messy job, dirty, especially when it comes to sanding. It's all falling in your face, but you know what? A little bit of effort, get you through the job. For me, it's one check off the to-do list for this boat. It's one step closer to getting it back into the water, so you know what? I'm happy with that. Any progress is forward progress. So with that being said, guys, be sure to drop a comment below, like the video. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you did. For those that have subscribed, been supporting the channel, I thank you very much. We'll see you guys on the next one.